Hello, Monetization Nation. Mark Morris has a Harvard MBA, is a university professor of business management, worked as a consultant for Bain and Company and Deloitte, and has consulted for more than 100 companies. Mark had the opportunity to assist with the marketing and communications for the Salt Lake City 2002 Olympic Games. It was projected to be the worst Olympic Games because of a bribery scandal. This scandal was having a huge effect on the credibility and monetization of the Games. Sponsors were not wanting to be associated with the scandal. In this episode, Mark shares how captivating storytelling helped save the 2002 Olympic Games. He also shares his insider story of helping create Burger King's viral Subservient Chicken campaign. Tectonic shifts are constantly transforming the earth and business, causing destruction and huge growth opportunities. I'm Nathan William, the host of Monetization Nation, where we learn how to leverage business tectonic shifts to transform monetization. So I'm joined here today by Mark Morris. Mark is a Harvard MBA. He has done consulting work through Bain and Company and through Deloitte. He is currently a business management professor at Brigham Young University, Idaho. He has run a consulting practice and helped more than 100 different companies grow over the years. And we feel very fortunate to have him join us on the show. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Well, great to be here.
Okay, so Mark, I sent you a list of these tectonic shifts that we're talking about in this Monetization Secrets book. Before I start asking you questions, are there any specific stories you would like to share that come to mind from that illustrate those principles?
Yeah, for sure. There are a couple that came to mind as you shared your information, and I was thinking about what might be interesting to people. I'll share three that I feel greatly blessed and to have the opportunity to be a part of. The first one actually happened right around 9/11. And so I was in the city and on 9/11. I remember, I was with a CEO client who came out of his hotel and said, I saw the whole thing. The second plane made a beeline to the second tower under attack, and that's kind of an interesting story in of itself. But that the day before, the Olympic Committee, the Salt Lake Olympic Committee, was in town looking for places for the Olympic flame to rest over the Christmas holidays, and I had an opportunity to be a part of that Olympic Games. You may or may not recall, it was projected to be the worst Olympics in history because of a scandal that had kind of broken out around bribery and the games and all the things that go along with sports that are kind of ugly, and it kind of erupted. And Mitt Romney came in and he helped clean things up. But one of the things that was most interesting about that process as I worked with them in trying to help do that is the focus. And as we talk about connection and we talk about people's passions. I mean, I don't know if there's more passion that could be expressed than in the Olympics and someone being so dedicated to their sport and literally spending their life and giving their life to be an elite athlete. And as we talked about what should be the focus to try to move things away from the scandal and move things away from what had become the focus. The thought was, hey, let's really focus on the athletes and their story. Let's talk about them overcoming. Let's talk about them, being able to persevere. Let's really focus on who the athletes are, what they're doing, and it's not about me. It's not about Mitt. It's not about whomever. It's really about the athletes and connecting with them and their stories. And as we did that, as we talked about that, things really did shift, and the sponsorships did come back, and it was projected to be a terrible Olympic Games, a flop, everything in the negative. You could as you looked at the headlines around the Olympics, it was all about the scandal before the Games, but after the Games there was a definite change. It was a profitable Games. It was said, one of the best games ever. And a lot of that had to do with this focus on connection and telling that story around the athletes themselves.
So what was the role you played in the Olympics?
So I worked at a communications marketing firm, and our role was to help market the Olympics, and we did the torch relay, we did the work around the messaging for SLOC, the Salt Lake Olympic Committee, and worked with the leaders there to help make sure the successful games.
Nice. And so you believe that in the aftermath of a scandal that was destroying the credibility of the games, that focusing on stories of the athletes was one of the secrets to success that helped turn around that Olympics and helped make it be such a big success.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting how a news cycle goes. And you can, as you continue to dig, you can constantly find negative things to focus on. But giving people hope and focusing on what the Olympics really is about in terms of their performance and them doing so well is I think what carries the day all the time for the Olympics. And I think that if we would have kind of taken a different approach, it could have always been the focus, and it could have been prior to that, for example, other Winter Olympics had been in the negative and in the red in terms of their profitability, and obviously with the Olympic Games, sponsorships are really big, and what sponsor wants to be associated with scandal? But if you can really tap into what people really connect to, these stories of overcoming and hard work and diligence and effort. I think that's really why people watch the Olympics often anyway, and we just were able to, I think, make that a highlight instead of just a part of the overall story.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've heard people refer to the scandals of that Olympics, and that there was some bribery involved. But honestly, I can't tell you what any of those scandals are. I don't know what any of those scandals are, and don't know any of the stories behind it. But I do know how I felt when I watched the Olympics, and I do know that I was very moved by the stories that were told in that Olympics. And I think it's neat how it would have been very easy for the communication strategy of that Olympics to focus on how we did wasn't wrong, or what it wasn't that bad, or was this person's fault, or it would have been very easy to focus on defending the negative, and instead you focused on something completely different and connecting through the emotion of the story.
That's right. So
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting story. I thought might be useful from a connection perspective. As you talked about video, one of the things that I thought of that also might be really an interesting story to think about. There's a campaign that I was able to be a part of when I work with Burger King, and the campaign was to launch their new chicken sandwich. So one of their top sellers was a chicken sandwich that, from the terminology of the food industry, was kind of chewed and glued. It wasn't whole breast chicken, and so they were launching this new chicken sandwich, and as part of that, they wanted to present this message that is unique to Burger King, which is to have it your way. And so in order to do that, there's thoughts around having a person dress up in a chicken suit. And the chicken suit wasn't a cartoony type chicken. It was more of a realistic looking type chicken. And so he was recorded doing those things. That was done in maybe an afternoon. And then it was put online, and people would type in commands to this chicken to have the chicken do things your way. And that went viral. And it was something that I remember taking the chicken to the Subservient Chicken to Fox News in New York. one morning so that he could do things for them so that they could have it their way, or later that night we took him clubbing in a stretch limo SUV in the city of New York, and it was amazing to see how many people connected with him having it your way. But the interesting thing about that, that is, I think, a nuance, is that the people thought that they were interacting with the chicken live. They thought the chicken was just waiting there for their command. And a lot of people thought that, although he was just pre-recorded. But that, I looked it up about a year ago. It's still in kind of one of the top 10 marketing campaigns of all time.
So one of the concepts I talk about in the book is the very first tectonic shift I address is connecting with customers. And one of the principles, or one of the secrets of that tectonic shift is that hard times, challenging times, are the best time to connect with people. And you look at this 9/11 situation, it was, the worst terrorist attack in history, and the history of humanity. And it created a more unified tribe of Americans, right? It created a connection because of that challenge that we went through together. And we've all been through hard times together, right? We all have gone through that really hard class in college, and that group of people that we got through that with, right? It built a relationship, or that summer camp, or that whatever hard thing is we did in our life. We've got to look at it as an opportunity to create deeper connection. What are your thoughts on that?
I love that. I love the fact that there's a kind of an explicit recognition of, we all go through hard times, which I think true of anyone that I've ever met at any social, economic, racial level. I think that as I've interacted with people, for example, at business school, there's this kind of gauntlet we all go through, and that binds us together as families. I think sometimes we think about the hard times, and if we only dwell on the hard times, it can become crushing, defeating, and cause us to be hopeless. But if we talk about our resolve and how we work through them together, it can be really binding to an amazing degree. I wasn't thinking about this story before you brought this up, but I'll share with you if it's helpful. What made me actually go into business was a hard time. And what made me go to business school, and there are lots of contributing factors, but when I went into business school, one of the things that I was thinking about was, hey, when my parents went through an economic downturn, because my dad, he had his own business. We come from a line of entrepreneurs, lots of cousins and uncles and coaches and others that had their own businesses. And he went from having lots of business and lots of opportunity to having very little. And a lot of that was predictable, and he could have been warned if he would have understood the economic principles that were at work. I remember sitting in a class at BYU where my economics professor, Dr. Curl, he just walked us through what happens to the small guys when big guys enter the market. And as he walked me through that, as he walked the whole class through that, I say me, this is a classroom that holds 900 people.
Right.
So as he walked us through that, I just thought, man, he just performed a magic trick. Like off of a television show of a psychic, that you're watching, that says, hey, let me tell you about your past and your future. It just felt just like that, because of the predictability of, if you understand these laws or these tectonic shifts that you're maybe referring to. And so as I sat there and listened, I thought, man, I need to understand this better. And so fast forward, when I applied to business school, I specifically talked about how, I had this experience that really, shook up our family and was really, really hard. And, when I, for example, worked during high school is because, I need to help provide for the future. It wasn't just for extra money in the pocket. So it really was a change in our family, and affected me greatly, and made me want to help others understand these principles, which is one of the reasons why I thought, hopefully at some point in my life I'll be able to teach or share these things with others.
For sure. So what we can learn from that is when our customers are going through hard times, when our customers are going through a pandemic, when our customers are going through a job loss or something like that, if we can be there for them when they're at their lowest spot, they're going to be loyal to us forever, right? It's an opportunity to, I'm not saying it's something we're deviously doing to take advantage of someone. I'm just saying be there for people, right? It's this law of reciprocity that it comes back around to us.
Yeah. And I think that, and I recognize we're not trying to be opportunistic. But I think that your point is that based on the principles of your company, hopefully these principles would say such things as we value our customers beyond the dollar, especially during hard times. And so, for example, I was with two executives the day of 9/11, and they got on. I think they couldn't fly. Obviously, one was from California, one was from Utah, and they rented cars to get back home, and they drove back home. And the car company said, "Hey, don't worry about it. We got it."
Yeah, that's right. And you
So
remember that. You don't forget that.
yeah, yeah.
Can you think of a company that has done a really good job of connecting with their customers?
Well, for me, and this is me speaking outside. I've not done work for them, but I thought that um, I remember coming home from doing missionary service, and
Where did you serve?
I served in Detroit.
Nice.
So did that Christian mission, and before I left, there was not an internet, and we were using DOS. And afterwards, there was the internet, there were GUI interface, and someone said to me, "Hey, let me show you the internet." I was like, "The what?" And they
You may be
sat down, they
the
showed
same
me.
age as me. Yeah. I
they,
went through
they
that same thing.
they took me to Alta Vista and Yahoo, and I thought, man, this is amazing. But you fast forward, and all of us use Google. So for me, one of the companies that have done a great job with that is Google, in terms of, hey, they created not just a way to search, but a full business model that said, oh, well, let me connect you on the back end, and let me show you how to use Google AdWords, and let me show you how you can see what people are searching for. And so there's this whole gig economy based work that is a new, being an AdWords analyst and specialist wasn't even a thing, right? I mean, that's a new category,
Yeah.
and I think that they've done that by connecting with customers well.
Yeah, so they did a really good job of connecting with the customer by providing value. They gave us amazing quality search results for free, right? That was the value. And then they figured out how to monetize it by putting the ads on it. And we didn't mind the ads because we got so much value from Google that it was worth the trade.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you think of a company that has done a really good job of establishing credibility with their customers, or marketing through credibility?
You say that, and the first thing that comes to mind is the New York Times. And whether you like their politics or not, I think they've done a good job at saying, hey, we are the standard. And I typically will, look at the Journal and the Times just to kind of see a balanced approach to the news. But I think they're, from things that are quoted, on the floor of the Senate to other places. I feel like there's a lot of credibility there, and they have a brand that says credibility,
And
and they work hard to maintain that brand.
that's right. And as a result of that credibility, they've established a paywall recurring revenue business model, unlike any other newspaper out there.
News.
I believe they generate more revenue from their paywall, recurring revenue from their paywall, than any other news organization in the world.
Hmm.
Do you think that's accurate?
I don't know if that's for sure, but when you
believe
say
that's
credibility, that's what I think of when I think of.
Yeah. Okay, so the last one that I want to ask you about is recurring revenue, where it seems like every major company today has been trying to shift their business model from a one-time transaction to a recurring business model. Can you think of any great stories or examples of companies that have done a particularly good job of that?
Well, I think in general, the software industry, moving from, hey, I used to buy a disk, to software as a service, is something really to think about and behold. This is a very common business model, right? I mean, basically what you're saying is, instead of having a transaction, I want to become a utility. That's what you're saying.
That's right.
And so this business model is as old as water. Buying water or gas or electricity from GE, say, potentially. So the thought of having recurring revenue is very, very common. But to say, hey, how can I make my business so that it enables that, is something that I think lots of companies have rethought and reconsidered.
Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your stories and secrets with us. To connect with Mark and learn more about his consulting services, please visit the blog post for this episode to find a link to Mark's LinkedIn page. Here are some of my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, when we face a scandal or other crises, using great storytelling to build connections can be a powerful tool to shift the focus away from the scandal to something much more positive. Number 2, when we are in the midst of something negative, it is often difficult to just remove the negative. That leaves a void, and something has to fill the void. Often it is much easier to make the negativity go away by focusing on replacing the negativity with something positive. Number 3, when we can create marketing campaigns that our target audience feels are personalized, like the Subservient Chicken campaign, it can greatly increase our ability to connect with that target audience. Number 4, we should look at hard times as an opportunity to build deeper connections. When we are there for others through their dark times, it can build loyalty that lasts a very long time. If we desire monetization we have never before achieved, we must leverage strategies we have never before implemented. I challenge each of us to pick one thing that has resonated with us from today's episode and implement it to achieve our monetization goals. Who do we know that is going through a hard time right now, and how can we be there for them during that hard time? Please join our private Monetization Nation Facebook group and share your insights with other digital monetizers. Do you want to become a better digital monetizer? To receive great monetization stories and secrets, please go to monetizationnation.com and join free. And if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the show and share it.